The Ruta del Desierto Atacama passes through remote landscapes in the north of Chile, through small villages and rocky coasts, to salt lakes, volcanoes and geysers. A journey as though to the end of the world. We begin our journey in the desert town of Calama, a place with only a recent history. The reason why the first men settled with their families in this hostile area was due to the opening of a nearby copper mine in November of 1911. Calama means yellow land, but the city also contains many green spots. The mining company had fine residential areas built along with parks and recreation areas. Yet during the day it is windy, dusty and very hot in the streets that are lined with simple, low-built houses. The city's well-developed infrastructure indicates its success as a good place of employment. Indeed, its population has expanded accordingly. Up to the beginning of the 20th century, a small number of Atacama Indians lived here and supplied copper to the mule caravans that passed through on their way from Salta to the coast. Since 2002, around 15,000 miners and their families have settled in Calama. Until then, they lived close to the mine, but it became too dangerous. The town is located 6 kilometers from the mine. The former residential area directly in front of the mining area is now empty. It's a veritable ghost town. Its houses, shops and streets lie abandoned. Only when the work shifts commence with cars, taxis and buses transporting the workers in or out is there any sign of life here. The rest of the time, it's peaceful. Chuquicamata is the biggest open-cast copper pit in the world, the pride of the entire country. A huge hole in the ground. On numerous terraces and at an altitude of about 3,000 meters, day and night rock is blasted out of the ground. Constant clouds of dust pollute the mountain air and covers the surrounding land. Each day, more than 100,000 tons of stone are blasted away. Excavators load it onto huge vehicles. The wheels of these special vehicles have a diameter of 4 meters. The large boulders of rock are taken away to be crushed, the first process in the production of what is known as red gold. Around 2,000 years ago, Atacama mined copper here, but the area subsequently fell into decline. However, in 1882, things took a turn for the better. In 1911, the Guggenheim brothers bought land to mine copper. On large treadmills, the rock is transported into the next area to be crushed still further. Next, water is added, until it assumes a paste-like texture. Amalgamated with chemicals, it becomes a copper mud which is dried and then melted in furnaces, the final step in the production process. The granulated material that contains 32% copper is transformed into a quality of 99% purity and then exported around the world. Our journey continues along a mountain range in a southeasterly direction towards a large desert. We reach San Pedro de Atacama, a small village situated within a fascinating desert landscape, a green oasis where the heat becomes less savage. The main square is planted with trees and has a long history. Before the Spaniards arrived, Indians lived here. Throughout the centuries, agriculture was developed in this fertile oasis. In 1744, the Iglesia de San Pedro was built in the plaza, an adobe building constructed of air-dried clay bricks and painted a shiny white. The Archaeological Museum is the largest building in the village and is part of the Catholic University. Belgian Jesuit Peter de Page was sent to carry out missionary work here, but he was obsessed by the excavations and established a world-famous collection of mummies in the village. Unfortunately, today's inhabitants of San Pedro are at odds with their cultural inheritance. The houses in the center of the village now have conservation orders on them. So the old houses are sold and become souvenir shops or bars for the many day trippers who come here. The original inhabitants are therefore almost forced to leave their homes. Few visitors stay overnight. The streets are empty and desolate during the night. We continue our trip in a southerly direction, nearer to the desert. "40 kilometers from San Pedro, we reach the village of Toconao. It looks desolate and hostile in the scorching midday heat. Streets of soil and sand, flanked by colorless, low-flying buildings constructed of soft volcanic rock. It's tired and run down. The nearby Jerez Canyon is one of the few attractions of Toconao. The Honar Brook attempts to find its way through the soft, tough stone. Since time immemorial, it has watered the fertile green plants that are in stark contrast to the arid desert. Nature still at work, even here. A freestanding bell tower is the focal point of the village. It's shining white, three-leveled and with a heavy cactus wood door. In 1750, the tower was built out of liparita, a soft, white volcanic stone. Only a short journey on a gravel road, and the Atacama Desert begins. At its center, it is the driest desert on Earth. Saltwater lakes and desert mountain areas, endless fields of sand dunes and stone, The forces of nature have formed an extraordinary landscape here. The Atacama extends between the Pacific Ocean and the Cordilleras, an area of stone and sand that is perforated only by various frequently dried out salt lakes. By way of natural evaporation, the salt crust has produced sharp boulders on which the little wildlife that exists here scrambles around in search of food. In these high-altitude desert regions, the changes of temperature are very extreme, often fluctuating by more than 40 degrees Celsius. Salar de Atacama contains several water basins that become flooded with the waters of the Rio San Pedro that has a high mineral content. The largest and most accessible lagoon is that of Chacha. It is inhabited by wildlife that is able to be nourished by salt water. A wonderful world of salt flats and arid, rocky plains. "2,000 meters above sea level, colonies of flamingo visit this region of the Atacama due to the severe summer storms in the high plains of neighboring Bolivia. The Chilean flamingo grows up to a meter tall and is colored white and pink. The larger Andes flamingo has a light pink coat. The flamingos search for food while wading and breed in large colonies. The crust of salt and mud of the arid high plains plus the thin layer of salt water has a very intense color that gives this area the appearance of a lake. In the remaining salt lakes are microbes and krill, the favorite food of various waterfowl. For them, the salt lake means life. The only humidity of the region comes from the melting waters of the mountains that also form this lagoon. These wet areas frequently dry out in the heat of the desert. The flamingos come here to flee the Bolivian winter with its powerful thunderstorms that reach to as far as Chile. Although the Atacama contains little water, it's been inhabited by man since ancient times. The desert's few oases were settled by the people of the Atacameños, the Aymara, the Aguitas, and the Chichorros. Later this region became part of the Inca realm. Following the decline of the Incas, the desert fell under the rule of Spain, and after that, Bolivia. The salt desert set amid the rocky landscapes shines out in all the colors of the rainbow, and in the background, snow-covered volcanoes. Beauty at the edge of existence. Natural forces have created these strange salt formations. The glittering salt crystals look like extravagant works of art. Even in these hostile surroundings, there is wildlife. The idyllic landscape shows no hint of a huge subterranean salt lake that lies hidden beneath the layers of volcanic material of this region. We leave the desert and return to Tocanao, where another natural wonder awaits us. Quebrada de Jerez, a huge fissure in the desert. This extraordinary natural spectacle is well worth a closer look. A canyon with high trees and surrounded by nothing else but rock and sand. In early times, people dug caves into the soft, tough rock walls. They lived here due to the ideal conditions. The Atacameños lived in the northern desert areas for several centuries and were relatively highly developed. They grew beans, corn, potatoes, and coca. They irrigated the land, bred llamas, wove cloth and baskets, decorated pottery, and traded with each other and with tribes from Peru. Next we visit the 100-meter deep canyon through which a small river flows, shaded by tall trees. A path leads through this unexpected green paradise at an altitude of 2,000 meters above sea level. The fresh water favors the growth of apricots, cherries, pumpkins, and other produce. Wonderful produce that one wouldn't normally expect to find in the desert. On both sides of the river, various gardens are hidden beneath dense foliage, with green meadows on each side of the river. The rivers often form small pools that serve as water reservoirs for irrigation, but are also used for bathing. A unique microclimate within a well-hidden location. It's almost like a mood of nature, a miracle created by fresh water. Our route continues further north to an archaeological sensation. The ruins of TULOR in the Los Flamencos Nature Reserve are situated amid a large salt lake, the remains of a pre-Columbian village. Wooden pathways travel across the excavated land and over the dwellings of a 2,800-year-old culture that once thrived here. The remains of the mud buildings highlight the important transition from a nomadic life to one of settlement, and circular huts with a diameter of up to 12 meters. Remains of walls that have survived since ancient times in the desert sand, protected by constant erosion from the wind. Excavation work has been carried out here since the 1980s, and a section of the settlement has already been fully worked. The remainder is still hidden beneath the desert sand. Nearby, we reach a fantastic world that's like something from a distant planet. The Valle De La Luna is particularly impressive. In primeval times, it was a lake whose bed was elevated and developed due to tectonic activity. Erosion, strong winds, extreme sunshine, and changes in temperature formed this rocky, almost completely lifeless landscape. An enchanting landscape of colored gypsum, clay, salt, and sand, and not the smallest hint of organic life, like a valley on the moon. Hills and cliffs of various shapes, and in the background, the huge Cordilleras with its white peaks, in sharp contrast to the blue sky. Sand dunes extend between rocky hills, fill up the hollows and make the landscape look even more surreal. A sandy sea with islands of rock. And in between, single rocks of various shapes and sizes. In the Saltpeter War, Chile, with the help of the United Kingdom, negotiated with Peru and Bolivia, and the Atacama became the northern province that it is today. A bizarre world full of valuable mineral resources and natural sculptures of salt and mud that only nature could dream up. Here, the Atacama Desert becomes a fairy tale land, a land of fantasy and illusion. The light of the setting sun makes the landscape look even more surreal. The final leg of our journey travels north, higher and higher, to the Bolivian border. Again, another remarkable area. Dark, smoky, loud, and with an unpleasant odor. At an altitude of 4,300 meters, hot water fountains and steaming clouds of smoke are emitted from the ground. Bubbling hot water spews from the various holes. This is the primeval high valley of El Tatio, the highest geyser field in the world. Here, it's clear that the Andes is a relatively young volcanic mountain range that is still settling down. The earth here shakes and is very much alive. There are mud geysers, hundreds of fumaroles with steam fountains, and a number of geysers that shoot several meters high into the sky. In the morning, this natural spectacle is particularly beautiful, when the hot steam condenses in the ice-cold morning air. Here, our journey through the remote north of Chile comes to an end, through the Desierto Atacama.